Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Little Things in Orbis. Today, I want to discuss something that I think is very important to the narrative of Episode 3, but may be a little hidden to those who are simply skimming through the story in order to complete the content. I want to talk about the implications of the automatic doll, Chloe. To start off, I created this channel for those heirs who do not have the time to carefully read through every piece of dialogue and scan through every image for clues on where the narrative is going. I regularly see on Reddit that some heirs have also expressed interest in being able to venture into the weeds of the narrative and discover new and fascinating aspects of the story, to help cushion the fall when dealing with all of the RNG that exists inherently in this gacha game. So, I'm hoping that you, who is watching right now, will give me a chance to entice you into joining me and other heirs on this journey through a story that is expected to last at least another 7 episodes. For the time being, I want to focus on the most recent lore, as that is probably where most people are at in the story. And like I said in the last video, I have some episode summaries being made, so that should suffice into bringing everyone up to speed generally on where the story is going. And I think then we can go back every once in a while to explore any unresolved lore from the past 2 episodes. So, without further ado, let's get into some lore and theory. For the entire first 2 episodes, Chloe was a part of our rosters, but was never really given a chance to shine in the narrative, which was strange because every other original character had been given some screen time at that point. It wasn't until we received Chloe's side story, I'm the Queen of Everything, that we got a taste of who Chloe was and what kind of story she would be given. We had known about Chloe being a queen of sorts since her creation from the description, but any details had been hidden away behind a character that had been pretty much relegated to a Wyvern DPS. Finally, her story was released, and we were told that Chloe was a happy-go-lucky wanderer that was looking for a kingdom to be queen of. At a certain point in time, Chloe meets Prince Aether, and although she attempts to court him into marriage so that she can become Queen of Ezra, Aether informs her that Schneel, the next king of Lefundos, was spotted in Britannia. She then sets off to find him in order to become the next queen of Lefundos. To her dismay, the side story begins with her dejected by her lack of fruitfulness in locating Schneel. She begins to wonder if she could just set up her own kingdom in Britannia, one that is better than all others. After wandering for some time, she finds herself at Le Maire, a castle that belonged to Charlotte before she left with Cecilia. Chloe decides to claim the castle for herself, until she is encountered by Paradoxia, Charlotte's maid in the dungeons. Paradoxia explains about how Charlotte left without a trace, and seeing an opportunity, Chloe jumps at the chance to become a queen. She agrees to stay at Le Maire to be their queen. Some more time passes, and Chloe begins to realize that something is very wrong at Le Maire, and that something is Paradoxia herself, who continuously tries to restrict Chloe from doing anything that she wants to do. Simple things, like just eating a cookie. Chloe concludes that Paradoxia's rules are suffocating her, and that she needs to leave. With a swift thud, Chloe bashes Paradoxia on the head with her hammer and makes her escape. As she flees from the castle, a maid cafe owner spots her on the road and decides to ask her if she would be willing to work for a maid cafe because of her cute demeanor. Chloe, being the one-track-minded doll that she is, asks if she can be queen of the cafe, and the shop owner interprets this as a kind of role in the cafe and agrees. As even more time passes, Chloe, now Maid Chloe, has been working at the maid cafe. However, her interpretation is that she is the queen of the cafe, and so does whatever she wants. When customers ask her for assistance, she nonchalantly waves them off because she is a queen, and a queen never bows her head to anyone. The cafe owner begins to lose their patience with her. One day, A fight breaks out outside, and maid Chloe launches herself at them to defend her kingdom, beating up the ruffians just outside the shop. The cafe owner is furious and fires Chloe for attacking customers, but her fellow maids come to her rescue, explaining how Chloe was just protecting them, and that without her, they would have to return to a state of allowing customers to be rude to them. The cafe owner begins to realize that this was Chloe's charm all along, and that her spontaneous nature was possibly an asset to them. They beg Chloe to return as their queen, and she ignorantly agrees, not really knowing what's going on, as the cafe owner promises her that she can now do whatever she wants. You would think that this is where Chloe gets her happy ending. However, 3 other automatic dolls from Politia have been scouring Britannia and Sidonia looking for Chloe, as it appears as though she fled from Politia and has been on the loose ever since. Commander Model Laika, Bomb Model Kana, and Support Model Brinus have been given word from Garo that Chloe has been working in a maid cafe, to their intense disbelief. They attempt to rein Chloe in, but she refuses to leave her station as queen. The maid cafe owner says that there's only one other maid that can take Chloe's place, and that is Paradoxia from La Mer. The 3 androids set off and find Paradoxia and bring her back to the cafe, where she accepts the offer to be their maid mascot. Chloe, who freaks out when she sees Paradoxia again, flees the cafe in protest, but is caught by Brinus. They convince her that she could be the first queen of Politia by creating her own maid cafe, and that she can really do whatever she wants if she were to do that. Chloe, suddenly fired up from the thought of being the first queen of Politia, agrees, and they head back to Eureka together. We next encounter Chloe in episode 3, when Ras, Mercedes, and Chu enter Politia. While navigating the city and looking for medicinal herbs for Ras, who is suffering from overexerting himself as a human, Mercedes and Chu run into Chloe, who is, of course, fleeing from Brinus again, having escaped from prison, but tells them that she is going to District D to open a maid cafe. Brinus explains that Chloe was only supposed to be in jail for 3 days, but because of her misbehavior, that sentence was extended. She then ended up destroying the facility and escaped. Reluctantly, Mercedes and Chu help Chloe escape onto a train and out of Brinus' hands. When they arrive at District D, Chloe bids them farewell. And that is the last we see of Chloe in the present. However, we are later introduced to a young Chloe during the Phantom CIC's journey through the Chaos Gates, where they run into Assassin Cartusia and Watcher Shuri, who are searching for clues to Straze. They end up in the Epitaph of the Wilderness, which is the city where Politis began before it was later renamed Politia. Young Chloe works as an AI systems administrator that takes care of all decision-making in the city. Her interactions with the group show a very infantile personality, although she is incredibly calculated in terms of her role in the city. Ultimately, at the end of Chapter 6, as Politis is attempting to persuade Rin to stay in the city and live in perfect controlled harmony, Chloe spots a contradiction in her thinking, and instead imprisons her for her emotional decision-making and deems her incompatible to make decisions while the Phantom CIC and the Celestial beings escape through another Chaos Gate. When Chloe eventually releases her, Politis comments that Chloe is developing emotions, which could be very damaging to the city, so she laments that she will have to develop a new AI system to bring absolute control to the city, but wonders about a name. That name she ends up with is Belian. Now that you're caught up with Chloe's involvement in the main story, it's time to go into speculation mode. I want to delve into possibilities of where the story could be going and to provide you all with a place to bring all of your ideas together and to see who guesses correctly, or to see if we're all just better story writers than Smilegate. This won't be a completely coherent story, or theory, as there are so many different possibilities, but I think it will still be good enough to get our brain juices flowing. As poetic as it would be for Chloe to become Queen of Politia, the very idea of her current personality lording over a city sounds absolutely terrifying. I think that the reason for why Chloe acts as infantile as she does is because Chloe was dismissed from her duties while she was still young Chloe, and thus her development as an AI was cut off. She specifically says that after her last master, she was given over to a new one, assumed to be Belian, who just placed her in solitary confinement over and over again. And as a child, this kind of confinement can be absolute torture and push them in the entire opposite direction that they need to, hence why she continues to rebel and escape her holding facilities. A question that I'm still mulling over is whether or not Politis is alive or not at present day. It does not appear to be the case from first impression, but there is a possibility that Politis could have transferred her mind into Belian and is working as Belian behind the scenes. That, or Belian actually killed Politis and took control over the city shortly after. Chloe seems to imply that her master just disappeared and her ownership was transferred over to Belian. I do think that Belian sees Chloe as some sort of threat to her, perhaps because she represents the emotional side of Politis, whereas Belian herself is a completely logical and rational decision maker. This is the reason I think for why Chloe is being imprisoned, and I do not believe Brynus when she says that Chloe would have been set free after a few days of imprisonment, and that it was Chloe's misbehavior that extended her sentence. I will also note that Politis' overall objective still has yet to be revealed. She mentions something to the celestial beings about her plan to save Orbis, but does not state who or what she is trying to save it from. It's possible that she is referring to Straze, since he would have come to Eureka after the events of the Phantom CIC's journey into the past. If that were the case, then her plan must have failed, since Straze was successful in destroying half of Politia before leaving for Sidonia. Of course, all of this is pure speculation. It could just be that I'm connecting dots that aren't really there, but that's the joy of theory crafting, right? Personally, I think it would be very interesting if Belian had killed Politis as a result of her tendency to get emotional, like we saw in Chapter 6, and thus take over the city in order to continue Politis' will according to how Belian interpreted her words. We may start to get an inkling of this in Chapter 9, which we will probably deal with Luna, Senya, and Ilyanev, which, by the way, sounds like an amazing roster of characters to interact with. In terms of Solitaria, I'm at a complete loss, because I did not expect them to bring in an entirely new character this late in the episode. Regardless, from what we know about her story and from her character trailer, it seems as though she's connected to Edda, which would lead me to be hopeful for more tidbits into the strange meteorite being called Twig, considering how it's linked to Edda. This would also tie in nicely later on if we encounter Senya, who apparently also used Twig's power to become a dragon slayer. Senya also has ties with Mortalix, who I believe trained her, so I'm interested to see what happens there. Anyhow, I believe that Belian is using the core of the city to summon either a celestial or some other higher entity through a special chaos gate. Since we know that the core of the city has been opening and closing chaos gates since the city was called the Epitaph of the Wilderness, it must have collected an insurmountable amount of energy by now. If you recall from the Iron Dolls side story from episode 2, the 3 automatic dolls tasked with finding Chloe encountered the summoning of an ancient dragon. Together with Vivian and the sorcerers of Witchhaven, they were able to stabilize the area, but Commander Model Laika reveals a story about an ancient dragon called the Great One, possibly a primordial dragon that would require an enormous amount of energy to summon from a pocket dimension. Perhaps this Great One is the dragon that we see at the title screen of our game for Episode 3, just like the Black Sword of Fastus was the icon for Episode 2. Perhaps Solitaria will provide us with the information about the Great One and bring him back into the narrative for the last 3 chapters of the episode. Or maybe Belian is preparing to summon the Great One so that she can defeat him and remove him as a threat to the city, keeping with her original duty. And could there also be a relationship between the Great One and the Celestials? Regardless of all these questions, I still think that Chloe is going to have a significant role in at least the last chapter of the episode. Although if she did take Belian's place and reclaim her throne, so to speak, I think she would more likely become a figurehead queen of Politia, with Flan and maybe Landy possibly taking on the main role of an actual city system administrator. Or, what I'm hoping is that Politis will return in some way, shape or form, admit that her iron-fisted control of running a city was maybe the wrong method, and help Ras defeat Belian before revealing to him the existential threat that she was trying to save Orbis from. Perhaps she will tell him about how Paradia fell to the Celestials and confirm that Straze is but a drop in the bucket of threats that are ready to storm onto Orbis at any moment. Maybe, just maybe, we will discover what is so special about the heart of Orbis. But I have a sinking suspicion that that won't be revealed or even explored for at least another episode or two. Anyways, I think I've started to ramble now, and I think I'm whipping out far too many theories for one video. So I'm going to cut it off here. Let time do its thing, and allow all of you to begin theorizing your own fantastical plotlines. I hope you learned something new this episode and that you are now caught up on your Chloe lore, ready for whatever twists and turns may be presented to us in the future. Do consider giving a like to the video and subscribing to the channel for more Epic 7 lore. And as you can see, I'm really dedicated to exploring the richness of Epic 7's story through the use of side story summaries, chapter recaps, and various lore theories. And I would love to have you along for the ride. And of course, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, keep it real.